Imagine walking into your local grocery store and realizing the food you buy every week now costs twice as much as it did last year. That's exactly what happened in Japan. A standard 5 kilogram bag of rice, the country's most basic food, jumped from around 2,300 yen to nearly 4,800 yen in just 1 year. Official data showed rice inflation approaching 100% year over year. Supermarket shelves emptied, emergency stockpiles were released, and imports surged in a country that almost never relies on foreign rice. Because when a staple food suddenly doubles in one of the world's most stable economies, it's not just a grocery story, it's a warning signal. In April 2024, a 5 kilogram bag of koshi hikari rice in Tokyo cost about 2,384 yen. By April 2025, that same bag cost 4,770 yen. That is almost exactly double. This wasn't a rumor or social media exaggeration. It came from official Tokyo retail price surveys. And it wasn't just one brand. By June 2025, the National Consumer Price Index showed rice inflation at around plus 100% year over year. At the same time, Japan's overall inflation rate was only around 3%. One category was exploding while the broader economy looked relatively calm. That contrast made rice more than a food story. It became the inflation megaphone. But how did this begin? The story begins in 2023. Japan experienced extreme heat during the growing season. Production numbers did not collapse dramatically, but the issue was quality. Rice must meet grading standards to be sold as premium table rice. Heat damage reduced the share of high-grade marketable rice, especially varieties like koshi hikari. So while the harvest volume appeared stable, the amount of rice that consumers actually wanted to buy shrank. That subtle difference mattered. Wholesalers noticed. They began securing inventory early. Stocks tightened quietly. The system was still functioning, but it was no longer comfortable. On August 8, 2024, a strong earthquake struck Japan. Soon after, an advisory warned of heightened risk along the Nankai Trough. Suddenly, households shifted into disaster preparation mode. And what do people stockpile first? Water, batteries, and rice. Consumers rushed to supermarkets. Shelves emptied. Purchase limits appeared. The perception of shortage became real behavior. Even households that didn't initially panic began buying extra rice, because nobody wants to be the last one without it. This was no longer a quiet supply chain issue. It became visible, and visibility changes everything. By early 2025, supermarket prices for 5 kilogram bags regularly exceeded 4,000 yen. That threshold became symbolic. Reporting at the time described 4,000 yen per 5 kilograms as a benchmark tied to public frustration. The government began releasing emergency rice stockpiles. Japan maintains roughly 1 million tons in reserve, a system strengthened after the 1993 rice shortage. But early releases were distributed through auction systems that did not quickly lower shelf prices, so the strategy shifted. By May 2025, efforts were made to move rice more directly to retailers, targeting consumer prices closer to 2,000 yen per 5 kilograms in emergency channels. This was unusual. Japan normally protects its rice market. Under WTO minimum access rules, a quota of 770,000 tons can be imported tariff-free, with up to 100,000 tons for staple rice. Outside quota imports face a levy of 341 yen per kilogram. That protection has historically kept foreign rice rare in Japanese supermarkets. But in 2025, private sector rice imports surged sharply. In May 2025 alone, 10,600 tons were imported, far exceeding typical annual private volumes. Domestic prices had risen so high that even taxed imports became competitive. When that happens, it signals distortion. Japan had already experienced inflation since 2022. Energy costs rose, imported goods became more expensive. But rice is different. Rice is eaten daily. Rice is visible. Rice shows up in sushi, bento boxes, and family dinners. When rice doubles, households feel it instantly. Central bank commentary noted that rice inflation alone added around 0.6 percentage points to overall CPI, but the bigger effect was psychological. If the most basic staple jumps 100%, it reshapes expectations, and expectations drive inflation behavior. Global rice markets were already tense. In 2023, India imposed export restrictions, pushing global rice price indexes to multi-year highs. Japan produces most of its rice domestically, but global volatility changes perceptions. It makes shortages feel plausible. It makes panic easier, and it raises the anxiety level in already tight systems. Japan has seen this before. In 1917 to 1918, wholesale rice prices rose about 1.9 times in just over a year. That surge triggered widespread unrest known as the rice riots. Protests spread nationwide. And on September 21st, 1918, the prime minister resigned. That episode reshaped Japan's rice policy, increasing state intervention in markets. The 2024 to 2026 episode did not erupt into violence, but it revived awareness of how sensitive rice prices can be. Even the term Iowa rice riots began appearing in commentary. And because rice is never just rice, it carries emotional weight. By mid-June 2025, average supermarket prices dipped below 4,000 yen per 5 kilograms for the first time in months. Stockpiles flowed, imports rose, the panic faded, but the episode left a mark. Retailers became cautious, consumers became more alert, and policymakers saw how quickly stability can feel fragile. In a country known for decades of low inflation, rice doubling shattered expectations. When a staple food doubles in price, it's not just about groceries. It reveals supply chain tightness, it reveals climate vulnerability, it reveals trade constraints, and it reveals how inflation spreads through psychology. Japan avoided widespread unrest this time, but history shows what can happen when rice becomes unaffordable. The bigger lesson is not about rice alone. It is about systems. When the most basic item on the shelf suddenly costs twice as much, it means something deeper is under strain, and those signals rarely appear without reason.